Rural Americans deserve access to the best our nation has to offer, especially when it comes to health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families' health. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Welcome back to Full Court Press with Sean Spicer. Good Sunday morning. Well, to break a lot of this down in the legal world, I am excited to be joined by Theo Wald. He is the former Assistant Attorney General and now the Director of the Administrative State Project. How perfectly timed that is, at the Claremont Institute Center for the American Way of Life. Theo, good to see you. Thanks for joining us this Sunday morning.
Thanks for having me, Sean. It's good to be with you.
All right, I played this before you got on, and I want to get to a lot of stuff with you, but I've just as a reminder and to refer, I know it's probably not fair to do to you. There's this issue in Virginia. An illegal alien has been arrested over 30 times. 30 times. And the Fairfax prosecutor has let that individual off 30 times. Well, he upped his game. Unfortunately, stabbed a woman at a bus stop. Okay. And now, literally the police in Fairfax, as I played this, I won't play it all again, but I'll play part of this so that you get the benefit of hearing this. The Fairfax, Virginia police, I think, intentionally set a trap to make sure that they were that they let the Fairfax County prosecutor know what they knew. Let me play it for you. Go.
I have an update in the Stephanie Minter case. That is the Virginia mother who was murdered at a Fairfax County bus stop, allegedly by an illegal immigrant named Abdul Jallo. I heard that police warned the Fairfax County prosecutor, who dropped numerous charges against this man in the past, that he, if he was allowed to be back out into the community, could do something like this. So I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request seeking the communication between the police department and the prosecutor's office, Fairfax County Commonwealth's Attorney Steve Descano's office. And I just received the results of that FOIA back. And what I have here is an email from a police major in Fairfax County dated November 15th to the Fairfax County Commonwealth's Attorney's office. I'll read some of it to you. It says, I want to bring Mr. Jallo's release to your attention because Mr. Jallo is one of the repeat and violent offenders we discussed when we met. I wanted to get your background on why he is out so soon and ask if his prior suspended sentence of, I believe, 5 years was pursued by your office. It goes on to say, and pay attention to this, unfortunately, based on the station's numerous dealings with him, it is not a question of if, but rather when he will maliciously wound, or worse, again. My role of keeping the public safe prompts me to follow up on his status. So this email between the police department.
Theo, the police are saying, hey, we know what's going to happen. Abigail Spanberger, the governor here in Virginia, is basically saying, well, gosh, the feds need to do their job. But the Fairfax folks are like, hey, it's a state charge, not a federal charge. You were the assistant attorney general. I mean, isn't she's being misleading with what's going on here?
Yeah, 100%, Sean. And just to start with the top line point for your listeners, Stephanie Minter, the victim of the assault here, the woman who was murdered, she was a mom and she was at a bus stop on her way to work. She wasn't in a drug zone. She wasn't engaged in criminal activity herself, just a law-abiding citizen going about her business and attacked by this naturalized alien Abdul Jala. And the other part about Jala's past, which you got at there from reporting from Fairfax Police, but he has a history of violent criminal conduct. This wasn't a guy who stole a Snickers bar from a convenience store. This is a guy who had been credibly charged with rape, sexual assault, multiple stabbings in his past, 30 total offenses, and was released. And I think the point here with Governor Spanberger, they want to make this about ICE. A number of Democrat state senators in Virginia have said, well, this has to do with ICE and ICE's failure. No, you're exactly right. This is a straight state crime. These were all state crimes in his past. And really what you're looking at here, Sean, is this is the fulfillment of the Democrat vision of public life going forward. You got a radical Soros-backed DA in this area. You have a refusal to work with ICE and immigration authorities. You have a total jailbreak view of criminal justice system, which is there's no offense that's too heinous to keep someone behind bars. And now you have a total denial of accountability from everyone who should be caring about this woman and now her orphan children.
Theo, I mean, look, I'm not a lawyer. I watch a lot of Law and Order. Am I missing something here? I mean, is there something where it's like, sometimes I say this with respect to politics to people, like the obvious, it seems obvious what to do, but there's something that prevents that. Is there something that I'm missing legally where that he can't just be deported?
No, not at all. You're not missing anything here. I mean, all of this would be grounds. I'm not aware of like his existing current immigration status, but all of this underlying criminal conduct, even if he had been naturalized, which is not my understanding that he is a naturalized citizen at this point, but all the underlying criminal conduct is exactly what we have a denaturalization process for. But the one thing that's really important here to keep in mind is you have a state's attorney, the local prosecutor here, Descanso, who was backed by the Soros, that whole wave of funding for, essentially pro-criminal prosecutors. He has essentially said categorically, not in this particular case, but categorically, he will not prosecute these kinds of individuals with these kinds of alleged crimes. So
it's on his website. He literally doesn't hide it. It's on his website. He says, hey, immigration status, not a problem. Like I want to keep, quote, families together. Like it's what here's, and this, I'm glad you brought this up, because what I don't understand is I've always believed or understood that, like, if I get charged with breaking a window and you get charged with breaking a window, we're supposed to get treated. I mean, not just theoretically, but if you got let off and I didn't, I could in theory go and say, hey, Theo Wald just got let off for breaking a window. I'm going to jail for it. Isn't that there's a fairness issue, right, in the law?
Oh, totally. There's a fairness issue. And, Democrats love to lecture us about the rule of law, but a bedrock principle of the law in our country, going all the way back to the founders' experience under the British Crown, was the arbitrary enforcement of the law, that one person is sanctioned and punished and another is not. And one of the things that the founders believed really strongly was that you could not have categorical dispensation under law, meaning just because of your race or your immigration status or your wealth, that group of people could not just be said, hey, we're just not going to prosecute you. But that's exactly the Democrat view of criminal justice now, which is if you belong to this group, no matter what you do, we're not going to prosecute you. And that's just, it's so violative of the legal norms we have, but also it's just so destructive. You see the consequences here. An innocent American mom waiting for the bus to go to work was murdered by this guy who should have never, number one, never been in our country to begin with, but number two, should have been behind bars a long time ago.
I just can't, for her family, for Stephanie Minter's family, someone murders, like, just anyone, right? I mean this like another human being murders a loved one, and you go, all right, well, we want justice. And someone goes, no, we're going to go out of the way to help them because they're an immigrant. It's like the opposite. The thing that I find so funny, and maybe I'm taking this way out of context, but look what happened to President Trump. They literally made up charges to go after him, right? Like the Alvin Bragg stuff. It was a misdemeanor. They made it into a felony. They didn't tell the jury that they actually found him guilty of a particular crime. And then in this case, it's like the guy literally breaks all law, and they're like, no, we're going to let him off. I mean, in one case, they go after somebody weaponizing the law. And the other one, they let people off. It's to me, I can't believe it doesn't get more attention.
I think that really is the main takeaway, Sean, that so few people have heard about this story. So there's been so little national press. I mean, outside of Fox and a couple of conservative outlets, no one's really talking about this story. And the facts here are so egregious. It's not, again, this isn't a story about a guy who stole a candy bar from a convenience store or, cheated on his homework. This is a guy with a documented history of violent crime who then attacked an innocent American on their way to work and murdered her in cold blood and broad daylight. And really, there's no consequences for this kind of conduct. And as you said at the outset, the governor's view has been somehow ... this is ICE's fault. And this is, and Sean, the big takeaway down the road is this is how Americans start to lose, if they haven't already, lose confidence in their institutions. Depending on what color skin I am, where I was born, I'm going to get a certain kind of treatment before the law. And that's what, that's the takeaway from what Trump went through. It's a takeaway that a lot of people are seeing as they acquit, some of these guys who attacked ICE agents in Los Angeles. Well, the jury was just like, I wasn't going to prosecute him. I wasn't going to vote to convict because he was the same color as me. That's never happened in our legal system. And the fact that it's happening now is incredibly destructive.
But to your point, Theo, this is insane. The Democratic Party loves to lecture everyone about the racism and what is their buzzword? I mean, equality, justice, fair. I mean, they've got all these buzzwords for everything about,
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here we are going the opposite way, which is first it was, we have this period in our history of our country where the color of your skin determined your outcome. We said we can never let that happen again. We must, learn our lessons and move on. And now we're going the complete opposite way, which is if you're in this country, if you've actually been a criminal, if you've broken the law, now you're going to get more rights than someone who's been law abiding. I go back to Stephanie Minter's family. I'm like, you've got to be like, I can't imagine how apoplectic they have to be saying that we lost our mom, getting stabbed in cold blood at a bus stop where you would think I'm just standing on a street corner. It's like, it gives me like thoughts of that young Ukrainian on the train in Charlotte where it was just sitting there. Someone walked up to you, kills you. And then the answer is, oh, well, like it's insane. I want to get Theo, though. I don't, because we're never going to figure out why Democrats do this. So I want to touch on one other big subject that the Republicans kind of touched on this week, and then I think maybe have taken their foot off the gas, and this whole issue of Biden's autopen, and it's back in the news. And then there's a question about whether DOJ shelved the inquiry. Can you just walk me through? Like, I'll give you my law and order legal understanding, and then tell me where I'm wrong. My understanding is that the pardon authority is like sacrosanct. If the president says I did it, it is what it is. And that unless we got Biden on tape saying I never knew that I actually gave anyone a pardon, like it's hard to prove that they weren't done with the authority of the president. Like, I guess the question is, how do we prove that they weren't done correctly? And how would we challenge them? But are we smart to back off from this, or is this we're just missing the legal angle?
No, I mean your JD in Dick Wolf programming is working out, Sean, because you're exactly right on the legal question here. Okay. This was always going to be extremely difficult to prosecute after the fact, especially when there are no witnesses. There's no witnesses willing to flip and say the autopen was used without the president's knowledge. And
does it matter? Does it matter if it was signed or? I mean, my understanding, again, this goes back to my law and order Dick Wolf understanding. Like, the law doesn't say it has to be autopenned or wet signed. It just has to say the president has the authority. I mean, I guess that's where I'm wondering if we're barking up the wrong tree. Like, we keep talking about whether the autopen is used. Does it matter?
No, you're exactly right. And when you and I testified before the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee on this, I think both you and I separately made this point, which is the autopen is just a tool. It's a tool of convenience. The question is whether or not the president knew the autopen was being used. That's the issue. So, I mean, this White House or the Reagan White House or whoever can use the autopen to sign documents. The question is the president aware that it's being used with his authority? As you said, that the pardon power is sacrosanct under the Constitution. It belongs to one person, not his chief advisors, not the Attorney General of the United States. The president alone gets the pardon. And the issue all along was, did Biden have the mental competency to actually authorize the use of the autopen. And I think that's where you say barking up the wrong tree, Sean. That was always my issue with the way the autopen story was presented by members of Congress or, conservative media. Was the real issue here was about Biden's mental fitness. Was he actually competent at this time or not whether or not the autopen was used.
Yeah, and when you and I testified, one of the things that the Senate Judiciary Committee, we were both there to testify about what we can do basically to prevent this from happening again. Because the idea was the press didn't do their job, the White House, the Biden cabinet, et cetera, covered up. I mean, what do you think we need to do? Because what do we do about a future president who is like Weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's not inconceivable after what we saw, just over the last 5 years with President Biden. Look, I think there were two sort of recommendations that you and I both made there, and I think they're really kind of demand that Congress start to think about this. One, which is you got to make the 25th Amendment more robust somehow. You have to either create liability for members of the cabinet, because if you remember, Sean, and maybe some of your listeners will remember this, Janet Yellen gave these interviews post-presidency, post-Biden administration, where she said, I got to the point where I was a little nervous to go over there because I wasn't sure if he was totally with it. And Buttigieg said the same thing, where he's like, sometimes I avoided some conversations with him because it would just restart the process, and I wasn't sure if he was actually tracking what we were doing at the Transportation Department. Okay, if secretaries are aware that the president is of such diminished capacity that he can't follow along in a simple conversation about highway policy, maybe it's time to call for the 25th Amendment. But right now, there's no obligation to do that. And in fact, the political incentives all run against it. And members of the cabinet, whether people want to acknowledge this or not, are political actors. So I think reforming that part of the 25th Amendment is really important. And the second thing I'll say just really quickly is we still have a real succession problem in this country, because there's a scenario here where you've got a president who is mentally infirm or so severely unwell, they're hospitalized or they're in a coma. And then you could have a situation like we did in the Nixon presidency, where Spiro Agnew goes down on a corruption issue and resigns. And then you've got a vacancy in this the succession filled by, under the current plan, the vice president, the Speaker of the House. But no one's really confident that jives, especially with Democratic legitimacy. And we've never thought about that scenario. What happens if there's a terrorist attack and the president and the vice president are both wiped out at the same time? And we've been told for years since the 9/11 Commission, hey, you guys got to get a handle on the succession of the president. You really got to think about this. And Congress still doesn't want to take this subject up. So I think both of those topics are ripe now for okay, if we can't prosecute Mike Donnellan and Steve Ricchetti for using the autopen, we should at least think about how can we make sure the 25th Amendment is used when a dude with the nuke codes is no longer with it.
Yeah. All I'll say is it's funny because most of the time I was laughing when you were talking, because I kept thinking to myself, most people are dying to get time in the Oval Office. And in the Biden cabinet, it was I don't want to be anywhere near that place. Theo Wald, thanks for being here. Really appreciate your insights, guys. We're going to come back right now with an unbelievable talk about peptides. It's something that Bobby Kennedy talked about with Joe Rogan this week. What does it mean for you, your wellness routine, and your health? Stay with us. This is Full Court Press with Sean Spicer on WABC.
This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.